Which I don't blame. People come in with coat on.
Neighborhood Council Candidate Forum. Our plan this evening is to have Jason Deal from the Fire Department make a short presentation on the bond issue. That will be followed by the two mayoral candidates and the questions for them and the questions from the audience for the mayor candidates. And then they'll move aside and we'll bring the council candidates up front and we'll go through the questions for them and questions from the audience. The question portion of the forum this evening is being conducted by the League of Women Voters, and Vivian Brooks will be the mistress of ceremonies for that. They've done this for us before. They do an excellent job, and we certainly appreciate their coming out and doing this. So without further ado, I'll introduce Jason Deal from the Fire Department.
Thank you, Carol. Like Carol said, my name is Jason Deal. I'm an assistant chief at the City Fire Department. And I want to share some information with you today about the upcoming bond. Will be on November 8th ballot. Thanks for having me here. I appreciate it. The bond issues for three projects. The main project would be a new fire station in Linda Vista Miller Creek area. The second project would be the demolition and reconstruction of Station 2, which is on Mount Avenue. And the third would be a addition and remodel of Fire Station 3, which is just down the road here at 39th and Russell. The total cost for this bond is $5.74 million. Part of that cost would be a new fire engine and a new structural fire engine and a new Wildlands fire engine for Station 5 in the Linda Vista Miller Creek area. The reason for we're asking the community for this bond is right now it's taking us 11 minutes to get into the Linda Vista area, and it's a rapidly growing part of our community. We have a response time goal at the fire department of 6 minutes or less, and it's obviously not fitting into that response time goal. The build-out projections for that area call for up to 6,500 more units, which equates to about 15,000 people could potentially be living in southwest Missoula in the near future. So it's really important that we deliver a relatively standard level of service to all of our citizens. And if we do not grow with our community, the result is a delusion of services to what we have. I think you've got great fire protection. You've got a great fire department. You've got a bunch of good people down there. We've got great equipment, but we can't stagnate while our community grows. So if we grow and the fire department stays the same, response times are going to get longer, and that level of service you got now, which I think is darn good, is going to decrease. Station 2 is the other project. It was built in 1953. And our community got its money's worth out of Station 2. It's a great station, has been, but it was built in 1953, and to put it simply, it's just too darn small. We have equipment that we cannot station at that station because we're limited on space. And aside from that, the boilers is in need of upgrade. It's poorly insulated. It's fairly expensive to heat. The plumbing and electrical all are in need of upgrades. We did a cost analysis of just adding on to the building and remodeling it, fixing it up. And the price was so close to starting over and building a whole new building, we decided to go with building a whole new building, and that way hopefully the community will get another 50 years out of that, I hope. Station 3 is the smallest of the projects. It's just we're going to extend the back of the existing bays and add a smaller third bay for a Wildlands engine. And basically the reason for that is all of our equipment is on a replacement schedule now. We don't have to go ask our taxpayers for when the engine at Station 1 wears out. We don't have to go float a bond. The engines for 5 are on this bond because that's a new piece of equipment. But like the apparatus at Station 1, Station 2, Station 3, when those were out, we're on a replacement schedule. That's built into the city budget, so we don't have to go ask you people, hey, we need new fire engines. So what happens is our ladder truck out at Station 4 is going to be going to Station 3 when the ladder truck at Station 3 retires, and then we'll get a new one at Station 4. Well, the ladder truck at 4 won't fit in the Station 3 is one reason. So we need to extend those bays a little bit, and it'll give us room for a Wildlands engine as well. So as long as I'm out, I wanted to share a little information too about what your fire department does, and we are your fire department. We're here to serve you. We're here to serve the community. And everybody knows that the fire department fights fire, but we also do emergency medical service. All our firefighters are trained to at least the EMT level. We have a few paramedics, and we're getting more paramedics all the time. We're running basic life support engines and advanced life support engines. We're also doing various types of rescue, and we're doing river rescue, ice rescue, confined space rescue, trench rescue. And a lot of these areas of rescue are becoming specialized now. When I first got hired, somebody'd fall in the river, and we'd just go down to the river. We'd have our bunker gear on, our boots and everything, go down the river. Well, thank goodness none of us fell in because we would have been goners. And we'd throw a ladder out on the ice and climb out there. You know, it was bad. And now all these areas were specialized. They're specialized areas, and we're specially trained in those areas. We're a lot smarter than we used to be. We're a lot safer than we used to be. And so we're really expanding what we do as a department. We also have a hazardous materials team. 12 of our members are part of a regional team, which is a joint venture between Missoula Rural Fire Department, the University of Montana, and some private industry. We have a fire prevention bureau. If you're a business owner, you're probably familiar with the fire inspectors coming through once in a while and bugging you. We've got 5 members in there, and they try to prevent bad things from happening in the first place. Try and make things safer for the community, make sure no fire exits are blocked, that the sprinkler systems have been maintained, and also make things safer for the firefighters. Because the less fires we have, the safer their job is, and the worse the fire is, the safer they are. We're also doing something new this year is we started doing some fuel mitigation projects, thinning projects, as the city has purchased open space and you know, parkland and stuff. We have a need to maintain that, and we had a couple areas that were pretty thick with timber. The first one we did was on Pine Ridge down here in the Patty Canyon, South Hills area. Takema Drive, I believe, was close to there. We did a little thinning project up in there to protect the homes above it. We did one up on Elk Ridge as well in the Rattlesnake. And we just got some money, some grant money to do some more for next year. So hopefully that'll keep coming in and we can keep doing little projects. We'll never be a big player in that because we're pretty limited on our wildlands within the city limits. But it's something we're interested in doing. We'll keep on doing it. Does anybody have any questions?
I got one.
Yeah.
Response time to Snow Creek. Don't you think the infrastructure is part of the problem?
The development itself?
No, the road getting out there.
That's a big part of it. It's pretty. Missoula is geographically not the best place to try and plan emergency response. And right now there's one road in that area and one road out, and that's part of the reason it takes so long to get in there, and that's why we need something in there.
Well, should we spend our money on roads instead of fire stations?
That's thought. I don't know what. I think fire station's a lot cheaper. I don't know.
I don't know.
I just deal with what we got. That brings up another point I want to stress is that you might think, you know, why am I paying for a station all the way over in Linda Vista? Well, your fire department's really a network of fire stations. No single station, you know, that station in your neighborhood doesn't just serve your house and your neighborhood. That station responds everywhere in the city. When you have a structure fire, we have 3 engines respond. And that leaves 1 station available to cover the rest of the community. And if we do a 5th station, that'll double that capability, I guess. And that station will not stay in Linda Vista if we have something going on downtown where 3 engines are up there. We're going to bump that station, that crew, to Station 2 or Station 3, so it's more centrally located to cover the rest of the community, depending upon, the time of day, what calls we anticipate. Yes, ma'am?
Where is it going to be located in?
There's no physical address yet. It's basically if you drive lower Miller Creek Road till you hit the end of the sidewalk. It's right at the edge of the city limits. I put a 4x8 sign out there. It's big, you won't miss it. But Maloney Ranch LLC donated that land to the city. It's 1.5 acres. So that was our gift to the city, and hopefully we can take advantage of that. Yes, sir.
2 parts. What happens if the bond request falls through? And number 2, what's the term of the bond? In other words, when will it be paid off?
Number 2, for 20 years is the term. And if the bond fails, we'll have to go back to the drawing board and come up with a strategy. Obviously, we wouldn't be coming to the taxpayers asking for money if we had the funds to build it without it. So I'd have to get together with the chief and come up with a game plan if we're going to try and run it again, or try and come up with some other alternative to deal with that issue. Yes, sir.
You were talking about thinning projects. Is a Moose Can Gully on that list?
I assessed Moose Can Gully. I walked up that area. There's a lot of problems with accessing that as a thinning project. And I also measured I picked my priorities based on their proximity to homes. And that's one of the areas I'm looking at. We did some other projects first, but it's something we're considering. Yes, ma'am.
I live on Moose Canyon Gulch.
Okay.
And we have a lot of trees and shrubbery there. And we have cedar roofs.
Mm-hmm.
And I have seen kids build little fires up on Moose Canyon. And it concerned me. I called the fire department twice because they were little kids and they thought they were building a bonfire. They didn't know any better.
Yeah, there's spots in Moose Can that are pretty thick, but everything's down in the gully, and it presents a lot of challenges to thinning it out. One way would be to burn everything in place, but I don't think that would be very popular with your neighborhood either. So it's something I'm going to have to explore this spring. I'm going to hit it hard again and start looking at areas to pick this project.
How would you get into Moose Canyon? There's Hillview and then there's Hillview and then 23rd.
From a firefighting standpoint,
Yeah, if there was a fire.
we're going to protect the homes, and we're not going to get down in that gully. We're going to protect the homes and let it burn itself out, most likely, if that were the case. And probably that'd be the best case scenario, because then we wouldn't have to worry about thinning.
So you would get
Is there an arborist in the property?
No, we'd be protecting structures primarily, and along there, the people do have some really good defensible space. Yeah, you're right, there's some cedar shades.
lots.
But there's also quite a bit of distance between the heavy timber and structures. And if we can keep it contained between the structures and then those light fuels from spreading closer to the structures, that's how we're going to fight that fire.
Thank you.
You bet. Yes, ma'am.
Could you elaborate on why you have the 6 goal for reaching
6 minutes. There's 2 reasons. One reason is, and it's all in accordance with national standards, what's called flashover in a house fire, a structure fire. When a room gets to be about 1,000 degrees, we have what's called flashover. And so a fire will start burning and it doubles in size every 30 seconds, which is pretty amazingly fast. And when every surface in that room reaches approximately 1,000 degrees, every surface starts emitting flammable vapors and the whole room kind of flashes into flame. That typically takes 7, 8, 9 minutes. So our goal is to get there before flashover occurs for the safety of the occupants, obviously, and the safety of our firefighters, because when you roll up on a scene that's already flashed over, it's a much more hazardous situation. With a medical emergency, we're looking at, like a cardiac, someone who has a cardiac emergency, the sooner we can intervene, the higher their chances are of survival. So our guys are all EMTs and paramedics. We can intervene, defibrillate, get their heart going again or whatever, at least start, and that increases people's chances of survival as well. So it's that 6 minutes is 4 minutes is better, but we try and locate our stations in strategic locations that are within reason so this community gets the best bang for the buck out of it. And so 6 minutes is our goal. And that might even be a little aggressive too. But we think our community deserves the best. So, anything else? All right, thank you.
Thank you, Jason. And now for the next portion, we'll have the two mayor candidates come up and sit at the table if we could. I randomly placed the name tag or place names. You may rearrange them if you wish. And I will turn the meeting over to...
Hey, that's it. Yeah, this is good.
Well, you want me over there? So there's no real randomness here. It's all about television.
MCAT is here tonight. Hi, I'm Vivian Brook. I was asked to moderate this forum, and it's great that we have such a good crowd for the. It's great that we have such a good crowd for this panel, and also for the good information from the fire department. I'm representing the League of Women Voters, and the League was asked by the two neighborhood councils, the 39th Street and the Moose Can Gully Neighborhood Council, to moderate this forum and organize it. The League is a nonpartisan political organization. We don't support any candidate, but we've provided voter education and candidates forums such as this for over 50 years in Missoula. No candidate has been involved in the planning or in the selection of the questions, so we hope you find this fair and informative. The way we're going to work this is that I have 3 questions that the mayoral candidates will answer in turn. They'll have 2 minutes each to answer those questions. And during that time, if you have a question, you could write it on the index cards and give it to Nancy Maxon, and then we're going to ask those questions, and the candidates will have 1 minute, is that right, for the questions from the audience? And candidates, you don't need to take that 2 minutes or 1 minute. You can always be briefer if it serves your purpose. But we'll get started, and then after the mayoral candidates are all finished with their portion, we'll have the city council candidates from both those districts come forward. So we'll just get right into it. The first question, and you all, the candidates have been provided with the questions, so just to have them do a little up-front study, and I'm sure they've been doing this. What, did you have 3 today? 2 forums today already. So the first question is, the U.S. Supreme Court has recently ruled that local governments may force property owners to sell out and make way for private economic development when officials decide it would benefit the public. And how would each of you use this ruling in Missoula? And we'll start with Lou Ann Crowley.
We have one example on the books right now of eminent domain. Can you hear me?
It's pretty tough.
Okay, should we close the door?
Would it be better if the candidates stood when they answered?
Yeah, that might be better.
Okay.
I checked with the city attorney, and in his view, the Supreme Court ruling only affirmed decades-old tradition of states and municipalities having the right of eminent domain. And having been on the council for 9 years, I've only seen it used once, and that was when the city was interested in getting the land for the parking lot for the baseball stadium. And Idaho Timber was not interested in negotiating. So we never actually used the ability of eminent domain, but we gave the mayor the right to use it. It had to go before council to use it. I, as a mayor, don't see that in the foreseeable future that that would be necessary. Right now, the Department of Transportation, they're the main body that uses that right, generally, say, out on Reserve Street to get right-of-way for roadways. That's generally how it's used. In Missoula, I think people would be quite upset if we tried to use eminent domain for economic development. You never know when it might come up, but in general, that's a right or a privilege that I don't think needs to be used, and if it is used, would very sparingly, and certainly would have to go before City Council.
Thank you. Now we'll hear from John Engen.
And Luann's absolutely right. Eminent domain, I think, would be used as an absolute last resort. It's politically painful, and it sort of goes against kind of the basic notion of property rights for Americans. The interesting thing about this Supreme Court case is it had a little bit more to do with the economic development component than some of the other cases and some of the other uses of eminent domain. And I think that's what's stuck in a lot of folks' craw, the sense that somehow a business could benefit from your property being taken. And again, I think it's something you would only use as a last resort, and I frankly can't imagine having occasion to use it, especially for an economic development project.
Okay, thank you. The next question is, and I do recall this from our last council forum up in this neighborhood, that this topic of concern was at the candidates forum 2 years ago, and it's still pertinent today, is infill development in many Missoula neighborhoods. And what will you do to resolve this issue? John?
Yeah. Controversy over infill is, I think, controversy over some generally specific things, and we hear a lot about them at City Council. John Wilkins, for example, has told us a lot about alley houses, and I think generally we've tried to listen within the law. The city has, I think, tried whenever possible to follow the law and be reasonable about following that law. As a candidate for mayor, and as a councilman, I'm interested in making sure that we build houses for all sorts of people. But I think we do that within the law, and I think for the next 4 years, I'd like to spend some time deciding where we're going to build houses rather than where we don't want them. That seems to have been our focus, and if we can come to some agreement about where redevelopment is appropriate, where building houses is appropriate, we might get a lot further than squabbling over where they're not appropriate. So that's something I hope to accomplish through working with City Council and neighborhoods.
Thank you. And Luann?
I'll start out by saying that infill has been something that's divided this community. I voted for the tools in 1999 expressly for the purpose of reaching affordability in this city and to prevent sprawl. And when I realized that wasn't working, that we were giving away dense development and we weren't getting that back, I started voting against it. I voted against the moratorium. I voted for the moratorium on PNCs, which are the planned neighborhood clusters, and the density bonus. My esteemed opponent voted against the moratorium. I voted to hire a lawyer. When we heard about 636 Evans, the ability of someone trying to put a house in the backyard, we all voted against that. That was a test case. From then on, when we were sued, we hired a lawyer, and he said there's a good chance that you don't have to approve those. So I started voting against those. My esteemed opponent voted for that infill development. We need leadership that's going to take the problem back to the neighborhoods. You have been ignored. Your voice has been ignored. We need to re-engage the neighborhoods and bring them back into the process. You lost your protest right, you lost your zoning, and it's time to give them back. And that's what I plan on doing. It's true that we need to find places to put housing. John's right about finding places like the mill site, the lumber site, and the redevelopment out on Brook Street. We need to address the problem of growth, but we need to do it much better.
Thank you. And the third and final question from this portion of the program is, as the South Hills neighborhoods continue to grow, improvements to existing parks and the establishment of additional open space lands, either through conservation easements or purchase, have become significant issues. How will you address these concerns? We'll start with Luann.
Well, I feel for you guys. I feel for this neighborhood. Your neighborhoods were subdivided without the benefit of planning for parkland. The only available land, as far as I can see from talking to the Parks Department, is a 23-acre piece that was being considered for a conservation easement up until recently, when it was discovered that because land is so valuable now, that people aren't as interested in donating it or even being paid for conservation easements. So now that there'll probably be a trail across this land connecting, I believe it's Hillview with Longview. And that's probably the most you're going to get with an open space easement. I know Jeff Stevens has been working on a trail, an 8 to 10 foot paved trail from Wapakea all the way over to Meadow Hill. You do have one of the most inventive and delightful trail systems, but unfortunately there isn't a lot of guarantee that you're going to get much more in parkland. The most we can do is help develop the land that you have.
Okay, thank you. John?
10 years ago, the city of Missoula, you all invested about $4.5 million in the acquisition of open space through a bond. I've been advocating for months and will continue to advocate for another open space bond. The time is right to do that. Land won't get any less expensive, and I don't think we're going to see much more of it come available. In this neighborhood in particular, I was having a conversation with some folks from the Five Valleys Land Trust. There's a lot of interest, I suspect, in the hillsides here. And there are large private landowners who may or may not be interested in conserving those hillsides for a variety of reasons. They have some economic interests, certainly, and if we have some money to spend and some partners to bring to the table and some collaborative efforts in the offing, we may have a chance of preserving those lands in perpetuity, much like we've preserved some of the lands in the place I live up the Rattlesnake. I think that's an important piece of business. As we talk about quality of life issues, I think that's one of them. Preserving our natural environment for all sorts of reasons, not the least of which has to do with recreation and economic development, having this be a good place to live. The smaller side of that, the parklands piece, is always difficult. Through our subdivision process, we do a little bit better job of trying to ensure that folks have parks. We're working on some collaborative efforts with schools to see if we can find parklands. Our open space bond would also help provide purchasing trail easements and improvements, and could also help us maintain the lands that we have, all of which are important.
Okay, thank you. Now we'll go to the questions from the audience, and again, we're going to have 1 minute for these. But as we get into them, there are a couple of kind of complicated issues that we're going to deal with, so maybe we might want to do a little bit further discussion. And we'll start with John Engen on this question. What is your feeling about the proposed public power proposal, and why?
I voted to support Montana Public Power Incorporated in its pursuit of purchasing the transmission and generation systems of the Northwestern Energy Company. On Monday evening, I supported MPPI's effort to have enough funds with other cities in Montana to do due diligence to make sure that if we actually have an offer that's accepted, that we can make sure that we're buying something that's worth buying. I think that we have a shot today at controlling our energy future, and I think the alternative to us controlling that energy future is to have that future controlled by companies without any interest in Montana other than making a buck.
Okay, Luann.
I voted to oppose it, and I'll tell you why. I wanted to support public power. I want Montanans to have control of their destiny. But there's sometimes you just have to cut the cord and say, not at this price, not at this risk. 2.3 billion in debt. And what the mayor was asking us to do was to give MPPI $100,000 more to do this due diligence. That would have reduced our contingency fund to $10,000. And whether we're the good guys or the bad guys, we each have to go before the Public Service Commission because you have to buy the power on the market, the outside market. And just because we have the transmission lines doesn't mean we control the rates.
Okay, and I'll start with Luann on this next question. In 2004, the City Council approved this PNC at Briggs Court. Do you feel this is the type of project that will solve Missoula's housing needs and problems?
I think you folks are probably better to answer that question than I. I worked on that project, tried to help the neighborhood reduce the density. Sometimes you can negotiate with a developer. We worked very hard and we did negotiate up to a certain point. But we got density that was probably out of character. I mean, that's what we ask developers to do. If we are going to give you a special deal with reduced setbacks and all that to bring density, you need to fit in with the character of the neighborhood. That did not happen in Briggs Court. No, I do not see that that's the way to take care of our housing needs.
We continue in our community to try to balance neighborhood interests and private property rights and the law, and Briggs Court was an example of that. And while not everyone is happy with the outcome, I think we did our best as a council to try to follow the law and try to accommodate a multitude of interests there. Unfortunately, I think one of the best ways that folks can control their destiny in terms of designing neighborhoods is start having conversations about where we want to do this stuff rather than where we don't want to. If we provide opportunity elsewhere or in places we agree upon, we won't have to have this struggle. And I think that's the approach we need to take.
Okay, we have one last question for the mayoral candidates, and I'll start with John. And what is your position on the Pledge of Allegiance at council meetings?
You know, that's a council decision. We have not had a vote on that. I have always said the Pledge of Allegiance and will continue to, and I don't have any enormous objection to having council say it. We do it, I don't know if it's once a month, but that's an agreement between the president of the council and the mayor. But I'm as flexible as the day is long. Whatever the council's preference is fine with me.
We had a little bit of a struggle over this. One of the council people wanted us to have it at every council meeting, and we finally reached an agreement that we would have it once a month. But we also said that we wanted to, by doing that, bring in different groups that would talk about the history of the flag, all the wonderful things that are associated with the flag. I think it's a real opportunity to ask the Boy Scouts to come, the Girl Scouts to come, all the different people who have an interest in promoting and, celebrating the flag and our freedom and what it stands for. And as mayor, I would make sure that once a month turns into a real celebration.
Okay, I want to thank both John Engen and Luann Prowler.
You did, the first question was mine.
Oh.
And you didn't give them the complete question. I asked to address the tax base with that proposal.
Okay. What I was watching for also was the clock, and we have 4 council members to do this. So both John and Luann are very available, and that's one of the wonderful richness of Montana Missoula politics, is that we have such accessible candidates and also elected officials. So if you could, sir, get their information and contact them, that would certainly be something that I'm sure that they would both enjoy.
I just didn't understand why you deleted that from the question.
Well, I was watching the clock because on these 4 members of the city council, we're each going to have 2 minutes for their questions. So if you would excuse the mayoral candidates now, And And I want to emphasize what I just said, is that these candidates have been going to so many forums and have been available. Please, if you have further questions, and maybe the questions we did ask weren't answered as completely or as thoroughly as you'd like, please contact them. I know they're available. So, like Carol.
All right, if we could have the council candidates come up at this point, and we'll proceed. So we're going to try to, well,
I think I'll come over.
So we'll do
That's all right.
Ward 4 here.
Yeah.
We'll do Ward 4 on this side and Ward 5 over here.
okay.
So this will start, as I said, this is Ward 4 candidates. These are Ward 5 candidates, and if you want more information about the geography and the boundaries of those particular wards, there's a map over here for your information. The way we're going to do it, we're going to ask a question and go all the way around with all 4, and then we'll start with a different person each time and go on the next question. And they'll each of these gentlemen will have 2 minutes to address these 5 questions. They've been provided with these questions ahead of time, and if you will turn your other questions in again to Nancy, we'll see what we have time for. I think we should be aiming to get out of here by 9 o'clock at the latest. So we have we'll start over here with John Wilkins and Tim Lovely, and then we have Dick Haynes, and I'm sorry, I totally blank on your first name. I'm just blanking out. Mark Fitzgerald, thank you.
I'm the new guy.
Mark. So we'll start with John. Hillview Way is a major arterial serving the South Hills. The road has not been improved in 27-plus years and is considered by some to be unsafe. We understand there is a plan to install curbs, sidewalks, and bike lanes. What will you do to speed this process along?
Well, first of all, I want to say, when I first moved to Missoula, it was the second place I rented was on 23rd and 55th Street, so I know that road. And I've seen plenty of accidents, I've seen plenty of cars sliding off it in the winter, and that road hasn't changed one iota since that long ago. I do believe 2 weeks ago that the city council on their agenda passed a study on it, so it's starting to get in gear. How I would make it go any faster, I would like to see the plans. I haven't got to see the plans yet on it, and if the plans look good, I'd be all for it. I hope they would straighten it out a little bit in some of the curves, make it a little bit wider. Those are my hopes, but like I say, I don't think there's any plans yet on it. But anything I could do, I'd speed it up as fast as I can, because, well, that was 28 years ago. I think the question said it was 27 years ago that I lived up there. And like I said, it hadn't changed, and that's what I'd do with it. Thank you.
Tim?
Thank you, Vivian. Yes, it's a very important arterial, Hillview. I use it on a daily basis myself, but a small portion of it. And as always with projects such as this, the members or the residents of Ward 5 and Ward 4 need an advocate who will work to see that the project does receive the attention it deserves, and this project deserves a lot of attention. So I will be there on a daily basis to represent the interests of the members of the Wards 5 and 4, to see that this project moves along as it should, and to see that, and also we can't expect that we are going to draw resources from other projects in the city, but But we'll do everything we can, I'll do everything I can to see that this project gets the attention it deserves. It's a well-deserving project. Thank you.
Dick, please.
I'll take a little different tack on this. Mark and I were at Moose Can meeting the other night, and this came up from a question in the audience. And the concern I left with by those people, and I presume some of you here tonight, was there was no involvement, no public involvement. They didn't know what was going to happen. They didn't know what was going on. So when I saw this question here about how to speed it up, I was kind of bewildered by that. So what I did is I called Bruce Bender yesterday, and I said, Bruce, what's going on with this Hillview project? And he says, well, we're going to design it this winter, and we'll show the people our plan next spring and get comments on it. I said, whoa, wrong way. I said, you need to talk to people now. I said, you need to find out what's going to happen with this road, and they need to talk about it, whether it's going to be sidewalks both sides, they're going to change the grade, alignment, this kind of thing. I think people need to have some idea of that before you design it. I think we got enough of that problem now with City Hall where something comes out and it's a given. Furthermore, I also asked the gentleman in the back there, I think in the red sweater, at the Moose Can thing, brought up this subject of this easement across the bottom of that one piece of property. On the picture, it looked like it goes from Hillview over to, I've forgotten what street it is, to the west there. But I said to Bruce, particularly with this, if we have a chance to pick this easement up for this trail, I said, you need to have something for people to park up there. Oh no, that's a Parks and Recreation problem. I said, no, Bruce, if you're going to redesign the road, that needs to be considered now. And what I will do is we're going to have some kind of public meeting, get your input on that before they design it, so they don't come in and say, this is it, folks. This is, you take it or leave it. Thank you.
And Mark.
I travel Hillview, if not daily, multiple times daily. I live in Skyview Drive, Skyview, just next to Skyview Park. So the only way I can get home is either through Hillview or 23rd. Again, some of you know that I'm fairly new to Missoula. I've only lived here a year and a half, and in that year and a half, for the amount of traffic that road carries, I'm surprised we haven't had worse accidents either with cars, with pedestrians, with bicyclists especially, that I encounter going up and down the road. I give the bicyclists all the credit in the world, the one that braved that road. There's no place for them to go, number one. In looking up the South Hills comprehensive plan that was supposed to have been revised in 1996, originally written in 1986, I believe, part of the recommendation was for Hillview Road to be curbed and guttered and sidewalked and bicycle pathed on it. Well, we're now almost 2006 and we're still looking at the same road, according to John, who was here much longer than I have been. So I agree with Dick to the point that definitely the residents of South Hills need to have input on that road, what they would like to see, especially with the development that's happening to the east of Hillview there, that's going to be built in. And I'm told that on the western side of Hillview 2 going up, there's going to be development going in. So all that has to be taken into account, but definitely that road needs wider shoulders, sidewalks at least on one side, and bike paths on both sides. Thank you.
Well, Mark, that gave us a good segue into the second question. The South Hills Comprehensive Plan was adopted in 1986. That plan contains a commitment by the city to update the plan by 1996. This has never been done. Will you support and fund an update to the South Hills Comprehensive Plan and give your reasons for your answer? And we'll start with Tim Lovely.
Yes. Okay, yeah, of course I'll support an update to that South Hills Comprehensive Plan. We need that plan to move forward. It's essential to the development of a good living space in Ward 5 to have a comprehensive plan. I'm frankly a little bit ashamed of our city for not getting back to it sooner than now, but I think we ought to make it a priority. I think we ought to get her done.
Okay, Dick?
Well, when I look at something that's 20 years old, I'm saying, why bother? So what I want to know, if we're going to do that plan again, is what would it cost? I wrote down a series of questions here that if I were on the council, I'd want to know before we got into it. What would it cost to do it? We need to establish the plan's priority versus other plans in the city. And I realize that may not be of direct benefit to this ward, but I think we still have to look at the overall planning for the whole city. And I'd like to know what you folks expect from that plan. That'd be another thing I'd want to sit down and talk to you folks. I want to know how the plan would be used if we do it. And I don't know if OPG even does that kind of planning anymore. That may be something else. We'd have to train some people in there, and I think they need a lot of training. And I don't know what else is on OPG's list of projects to do in terms of planning, which goes back to priority again. So I think we have to look at some of that stuff before we could just say, oh, absolutely, we go out and do it. There might be other plans in this ward that are more important than that. So anyway, thank you.
Okay, and Mark?
Again, I definitely think it should be looked at, but as I read what the old plan was, which again, I'm assuming written in '86 and no revision since then, I've got to believe that the area has changed quite a bit since 1986. It's changed quite a bit since I first came to Missoula as a visitor in 1996. So I think some of the recommendations that it called for in here have been surpassed as far as density and housing and the type of housing that's going on up there. The recommendations for the parks, the sewer, things like that. Again, I think you're going to have to take a step back in a way and look at what is there now, and again, go out to the residents of Ward 5, South Hills, either through the neighborhood council or door to door, and get their input. That I think is paramount to any kind of decision that's made first. What do the residents want to see? What is working, and what do they think is working? What do they think is not working? They're the people that live there day in and day out, that see what goes on in that neighborhood. So I don't think I would advocate for a bunch of spending on something before we knew if we were spending it wisely, number one. And again, get the input from the residents as to what direction we should go, what improvements we could make to the South Hills that aren't already there. Thank you.
Thank you. John?
Well, I think neighborhood plans are important things. When I went to the Office of Planning and Grants website and tried to get this one out, it took me a long time and there was a lot of cobwebs on it. After looking through it, some of the things that were on there, unfortunately, there's already houses there. So to support this particular neighborhood plan, I think it needs to come back. I'd like to know how many people here actually seen it. There's 2, 3, 4. I mean, it's so outdated that I think it needs to come back in front of the people. Biggest thing about neighborhood plans is they need to be done by all the neighborhood. The neighborhood needs to get together, they need to agree on it, and it's a hard thing to do. And I think this one has a lot of good points that need to be kept, but it has to go over it again and update it because of what's already happened in the area. As far as funds for this, I know there's grants out there. I'm on a grant committee for neighborhood grants, and we approved a grant for one of the other neighborhoods that wanted to do this. So there's funding out there that can be gotten for this to do that. But I really urge you to take a look at this and revise it, and then bring it back in front of the neighborhoods, and then bring it up forward, because it's so outdated. It's just not going to work the way it is right now. Thank you.
I just wanted to have a reminder that we do have audience questions for the candidates after these questions, but if you would write them out, and they'll be addressed, they will be asked to all the candidates, not just to one specific candidate. So our third question tonight for these candidates are, what are your views on occupancy standards? And we'll start with Dick Haynes.
Thank you. I think they're needed, but I also recognize a very touchy subject. In my campaign experience through a number of campaigns, and a lot of it here in Ward 5 and that area, I'd come across houses that have college students living there, and there's oil patches the size of bathtubs out in front, cars that won't run, the lawn hasn't been maintained, the neighbors on either side are fit to be tied because they've got a neighborhood they're proud of, and this house is run down. So I would say if we're going to have some kind of standards, it has to deal with some of those issues. I think there has to be things about how many cars can be associated with that house. If they want to put 15 people in, that's fine, but maybe you can only have room for 2 or 3 cars, that kind of thing. So we have not a number of cars, but the parking space. And who's going to maintain the yard? I think the landlord has to be held responsible to see that yard is maintained. I don't necessarily expect students to do that. They've got their own world to live in and take care of to get out of school. But I think the landlord has to recognize that yard has to be kept to a standard compatible with the rest of the neighborhood. And I think perhaps the days and the hours of various social events they're going to have there may have to be in the law somewhere. In other words, if they want to have a party, it's over by certain hours, or it's only going to be on weekends or something like that. I think those kind of things have to come into play. I would support occupancy standards, but like I say, I recognize the sensitivity of it, but I think the landlords have to take a large part of that responsibility. Thank you.
Mark?
Occupancy standards, as I understand them, can be somewhat discriminatory. I don't think we want, houses in our community or in our neighborhoods that, have got 10, 15, 20 people living in them that were meant for, a family of 4 to 6. And of course, with that amount of people, to get around Missoula, you got to have a vehicle, so that's 10 or 15 vehicles. I think, where you have occupancy standards come into play is basically when there's a complaint. Occupancy standards can work both ways. They can again be discriminatory towards people, and the police have to act on a complaint. So I'd have to, look at what exactly the wording is going to be if there was an occupancy standard passed in the city. Research I've done on in the past that where they have tried to enact occupancy standards, again, it's come down to there's too much gray area involved. How do you police it? How do you maintain it outside of a complaint process to the police? Basically, I think it's just neighbors, watching out for each other and watching out for their neighborhoods. When you've got a house that is being run down and the yard not being kept up and cars sitting out front of it that don't run at all, I think you call City Hall and say, something's wrong here, send somebody out and find out what's going on. I know that's what I did in our street, and it took a month, but a couple cars got moved off the street that sat there all winter long. So I think that's the tact you'd have to take with an occupancy standard. Many blended families live together today, and it's not fair to discriminate against them. Thank you.
John?
Well, primary occupancy standards came up because of party houses that students are renting. That's why they came up in the first place. If I could see a good ordinance, I might go for it. But in the meantime, as the last 3 years I've been president of the Lewis and Clark Neighborhood Council, I've had to deal with this in my neighborhood with these party houses. We have a quality control officer that could come. He's done wonders in my neighborhood. He's calmed these places down. Cars sitting on the street, there's an ordinance against that. We use our existing ordinances, and we can curtail that problem right now, today. And I've done it more than once, several times in my neighborhood. One thing I'd like to see is inspections of rentals. You know, you can stop some of this stuff happening just because the house itself isn't built for that many people. If they're in a basement and there's no egress windows, they're not supposed to be renting that basement out. There's ordinances already about that. And that's one way to handle that. If there's a good occupancy standards come up that isn't discriminatory, I would look at it. I wouldn't say I would not vote for it. I think occupancy standards might be a good thing. But I'm not sure after the last try that we did, and we had an attorney trying on that, Mr. Basket, and, you know, it just went fly because it just was more discriminatory. So there are other ways to handle these problems, and we have a great quality control officer. Captain Lewis was our quality control officer. Give him a call. I'll tell you, he can do wonders to stop party houses if that's what's happening. Thank you.
Tim?
You know, I think John addressed a lot of this question very adequately in that, and I'm going to emphasize what he said, we do have ordinances in place for dealing with specific problems that occur in neighborhoods. And as I'm listening to these other candidates speak about this issue, it strikes me that, you know, occupancy standards, by their definition, are somewhat of a dangerous thing because the key here is determining whose standards are we adhering to. Yours, mine, or somebody else's, and who's the loser out in the adoption of standards like occupancy standards in neighborhoods. Well, there are always losers in the cases in which you decide that someone is not welcome in your neighborhood. Hopefully you're not the loser. Occupancy standards in the form, which take the form of defining relationships between members of households, are generally have been found to be unconstitutional. So that's out. We can't do that. But we can deal with the problems that we see in the neighborhoods, and John has gone through that. I agree with him 100% on how to approach those. Our world is changing very rapidly with regard to the types of households we accept. The standard household is not it's not an easy answer as far as what is the standard household anymore. So we need to we need to do some serious soul searching and before we decide on who we're going to run out of the neighborhood.
Okay, we'll start with Mark for this fourth question. A few years ago, the City Council rejected a proposed Walmart expansion in the South 39th Street Neighborhood Council area. A new expansion proposal by Walmart is expected to be introduced. Under what circumstances and for what reasons would you support or oppose such an expansion?
At this point in time, the people that I've spoken to in this neighborhood that would affect, I would vote no on it because they don't want it. And I would have to agree with them on that decision. Even though I'm a businessman, I think Walmart has every right to build the store. Of course, they already have the store. They want to expand it to another super center, which I think would help the traffic and the volume that the one super center does now on Mullen Road. Hopefully relieve some of the congestion at Mullen and Reserve, but at the same time, where that store is at and how those roads are configured around that store, it's maxed out now. The people coming in and out of Lower Miller Creek, Upper Miller Creek, Linda Vista area, that's the only road in, and it's 2 lanes. The traffic that store would generate would severely overtax those roads. I just don't think it's the right place for it. I think it needs to move further down the road, away from that intersection, away from that area, until we get a better plan on how to, move that traffic in and out of Linda Vista and Miller Creek better. You're just pouring gasoline on a fire if you would approve a Walmart expansion there. And I would not support it because, again, people I've talked to don't want it. And in a business sense, to me, I wouldn't want it there either with the traffic concerns that are there. I'm not saying economically it wouldn't be good, but I just think it's not the right place for it. And Walmart could definitely look at a different site than that store right there.
John?
Well, I could go on for 2 hours about Walmart. I'm not a fan of Walmart, I'm sorry. To expand it over here would be disastrous to this neighborhood. I think the people I've talked to that even brought it up, I just tell them, no, there's no way I'm not going to support this. Here's a couple of reasons. The mom and pop grocery stores are gone. Why? Ask yourself why. We let a big grocery industry like this come in on this side of town. What's going to happen to Safeway, Albertsons, Patty Creek Market? Are they going to go with Tidyman down the road? We got to start looking at that stuff. We got Ace Hardware, one of the best little businesses in this community. You can go in there and you get help. You go into Walmart, there's no help. Nobody comes and asks you, can I help you, or how does this drill run, or what size bit do I need for this thing or that? It's ruining our little stores that pay decent wages to their employees, health coverage, and unfortunately, if you followed Walmart at all, you found out that a lot of times we are subsidizing Walmart with health benefits and stuff. So no, I'm not in favor of them opening a bigger store here. It's not feasible. There's many, many more reasons on that too. Our traffic, the neighborhood, etc. I mean, there's so many reasons, I guess I can't say them in 30 seconds, so you got my feeling on that one anyway. Thanks.
Tim?
Well, the only way that I could see supporting a Walmart expansion would be if it complied with the urban comprehensive plan. And it seems that the last proposed Walmart expansion did not comply with the urban comprehensive plan, so it was turned down. Now, however you might feel about Walmart, there's good and bad in every situation. It occurred to me that a Walmart store on this side of town might reduce some of that northbound Saturday traffic on Reserve Street. That wouldn't be bad. But anyway, Walmart does have a history of being a large corporation, a very, very large corporation that comes in and disregards to some degree the wishes of the locals. That certainly isn't what we want. And it will have a negative impact on neighborhoods, and we don't want that either. So they're going to have to show us something better than what they've shown us in the past before I would support it. So until they do that, I'll be opposing it.
Dick?
Not much left to say when you get down to this. I would oppose it too, and the two reasons I would, one has already been mentioned. The congestion at that intersection of Miller Creek and Brooks or 93 is really tough to handle now. And when you're on Biggs, trying to get past the church there, behind Walmart and on to Miller Creek Road in the evening, sometimes that's a long wait. I think we need a stoplight there. Now, Walmart's known for innovative traffic control, and they might put something out there that looks attractive. But the other reason I would oppose it is that as somebody just mentioned, we lost Tidyman's. A lot of jobs left with that. And if we put a Walmart in there, I think we would lose either Safeways or Rose Hours or perhaps both. If you lost one of those, so we still have two grocery stores, what have we gained? We have a tremendous disruption to the economic life of Missoula. We have a lot of families who are seeing their way of making a living go down the drain when one of them, the spouse loses a job there or something like that. No, I think Walmart's doing fine the way it's configured right now, and they have a superstore across town. Let's leave it alone. I just don't see a need for it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We'll start this last question, a plan question, with John Wilkins. How will the neighborhood councils influence your decision on the city council?
tremendously. I'm a strong advocate of neighborhood councils, that I think most of you in this room already know. I helped get Moose Can Gully up and running. Thanks to Carson there, doing a fine job. I'm on the leadership team of the neighborhood councils for the city. I go to most of the neighborhood council meetings I go to. I believe if you want to know what the citizens are really thinking, a good place to start is in the neighborhood council. What I noticed at city council, which by the way I've been going to almost every one in the last 3 years, and also committee meetings, because I'm dedicated to the neighborhood that I represent. The people that come to those are a lot of times they have a self-interest when they should go to them. But to get to know what the real neighborhood wants, you gotta come to the neighborhood. And what other organization is there in the neighborhood? It's at the neighborhood council. Now, people say, oh, they're not working great yet or not. Well, they're not that old. What are they, 7 years old or something? So if you talking about like raising a kid and he's 7 years old, you still got a ways to go, you know? But I see every year in the last 3 years that I've been involved in neighborhood councils, they're getting stronger, they're getting stronger. Where Mr. Lovely lives, their neighborhood council wanted a zoning change. They put a referral into the forum. The forum passed it on to city council. It's in the works. One way to get a change. I helped start neighborhood councils. Actually, I was on the committee that actually first started them when the voters asked it to be in. So, strong neighborhood council person.
Tim?
Well, yes, okay, the question is how will the councils influence your decision on the city council? Well, obviously we have to listen to constituency groups, and the neighborhood councils come under that definition. I've spent 20-plus years working with various groups that are constituency groups. I believe strongly in them. I have to say I was doubtful in the beginning when neighborhood councils were created because I thought they were trying to substitute something for constituency groups that maybe would diminish the impact of what those constituency groups had to say. We're talking about groups like labor and business and well, okay, labor and business. Anyway, that kind of takes in most everybody. At any rate, in the recent history, I have become involved in my neighborhood council, and I am a member of the leadership team, and I've seen what a wonderful tool they are for bringing issues to the city council. But I want to caution those of you who are involved in the neighborhood council, you need to do your work too, or we need to do our work. Of course, I'll be in a different role as a city council person if I'm elected, but yes, reach out to your communities. Find out what they're feeling. I believe strongly enough in this that I'm committed to making 10 contacts, if I'm elected, 10 random contacts in the ward every month, and asking those people, registered voters, how do you feel? What do you see? What's your issue? What can you tell me about what's going on in your mind and in your neighborhood? Yes, I believe in neighborhood councils.
Dick?
I think attendance and membership in neighborhood councils should be mandatory for seated council members in their ward. As a legislator, I found out one of the most difficult things of all in dealing with this kind of business is to find out what your constituents think on a given issue. And it's very difficult when you're talking about something that may be statewide and this kind of thing, but here we're talking about a narrow area of citizens, and I think that's one of the best ways I know of is to go to the neighborhood councils and listen and learn. And I think council members' attendance at these neighborhood councils would strengthen the neighborhood councils. It would legitimize a lot of the council's existence in other people's minds. So, and I've already shown you tonight that when I heard about this Hillview Way thing, my first reaction was to call the city and find out what's going on, and that's the thing I would continue to do.
Thank you. Mark?
In all the areas that, I've lived in my life, this is the first town that I can recall that has had this type of setup, I guess. I think it's a great one. I'd just like to see more people involved in it. I know the Moose Can Gully one that Dick and I attended last week had a pretty good turnout at it, but when I look at what the map says the area covers, probably less than half of 1% showed up, I think, to that meeting. So I would encourage you, to get involved with your neighborhood councils. It's a fantastic way to collaborate with the city, with your elected officials, to know, number one, what's going on, to find out what's going on, to give your views to your elected city council person on the things that you feel strongly about. I know as I've gone around knocking on doors, most people say everything's fine, but some people, give me their views, and there's some pretty strong views on some leash laws out there in our neighborhoods because of the issues that have come up around that. Traffic comes up, infill comes up a little bit. So, I'm definitely, my first experience with this kind of thing is fantastic. I enjoyed the meeting last week. Hope to attend more, either as a city councilman or just as a resident of Ward 5. But I would encourage all of you to get more involved in them and make your voices known, because unless we know what you want and what you are thinking, what your thoughts are, we're playing a guessing game sometimes. Okay, so please get involved in it, and you'll find it's a great process. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And that concludes the portion of this program of the prepared questions. We'll take the questions now from the audience, and we're going to allow 1 minute per answer. Again, as I said before, if there's a complicated issue that needs more time, we'll try to adapt our schedule to that. And we'll start with Tim Lovely on this first question. How will you change the sign ordinance to benefit the citizens in our neighborhoods?
Smaller political signs allowed.
I'll vote for that.
Okay, just kidding. Anyway, okay, that's a darn good question, because I'm not intimately familiar with the sign ordinance. I have some general notions about what it does. Change the sign ordinance, and is this specific to a particular neighborhood? Just 30 seconds. Quick, the bomb is ticking.
No, it's to our
Okay.
neighborhood. I would suppose you would look at the commercialized areas.
Well, there's one thing. Let me just say this. I will speak to the one problem that I see, and these are signs which are close to roadways and intersections which obstruct the view of motorists. I think that's a problem. I would look for changes in that area.
Okay, good work, getting that under 1 minute.
I feel like James Bond. He stopped the bomb.
All right, Dick.
That's a difficult question. I watched with interest this argument over the Hilton down there, and I've since gone down and looked at the sign, and I looked at the ordinance that's in there now. I've heard people say, well, they violated it, and there's like until they didn't violate it. But I guess I'd come back to the neighborhood council and say, how do you folks feel about signs in your neighborhood? Do you have problems with any of them? If you have a problem, what do you see for a solution, or is it just a problem and you don't know how to solve it? It's got to come from you folks. It's not going to come from me. So I'd be trying to listen closely and very, very hard. Thank you.
Mark?
Again, as a business person, I definitely, think there needs to be a better sign ordinance written for City of Missoula. My experience with it in the short time I've been here has been that it's apply differently at certain times. In the case of the Hilton, for instance, as I look at that building, when I go by it every day, I don't see where the sign has made any more visual clutter to the landscape because it's not above the roof line. I mean, the building's 6 stories or 7 stories high, the signs are below that. They're on the building itself, so, the building is granted taller than what is usually out there, but I just think the sign ordinance needs to be rewritten to be effective for all businesses and applied the same way to all businesses equally and fairly to the business community, so that businesses do continue to locate here and bring economic growth for us. Thank you.
Well, signs, that was a heavy one there at City Council for a while, but I respect the sign review committee. They put a lot of work in. I do think that the ordinance need to be looked at a little bit, and we need to address taller buildings because Missoula unfortunately is getting taller buildings, so we got to address them. The sign I don't like, and I've heard a lot of complaints, you go down 39th Street all the way to Southwest Higgins, and there was a new place built that has a sign that's so bright, the person across the street does not even have to turn her lights on to read the newspaper. That's pretty bad. And that's a bad sign down there. It's the brightness of it. So I think we need to relook at our ordinances on signs and maybe adjust to our time that we are right now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And we'll start with Dick Haynes for this next question. What is your stance on Missoula's bid for Northwestern Energy?
I think it's a potential disaster. They keep talking about it's a public business. It's not for Montana people. It's going to benefit the people that are in the organization. I talked to some public service people, two, a Democrat and Republican on a public service commission. They think it's highly unlikely they're going to get the BPA power they keep talking about. Last night, or the other night, I guess it was last night, I didn't see the mayor answer that question clearly, what they would do if they lose a challenge in front of PSC. He's used words like we're robust and we can do this and that. Nuts. You people are going to pay for it if that's the case. I think the vote last night by the mayor was a conflict of interest and for his own personal gratification.
Mark?
This came up, I think, at the Moose Can Gully meeting a little bit too. If I'd have had to vote on it Monday night, I would have had to voted abstain, because I just don't understand all of it yet. It's a big undertaking they're attempting, and I'm not on the side of saying it's wrong at this point, but I don't have enough information yet that's been forthcoming. Either the media hasn't given us enough, or the parties involved haven't given enough to the media, so that the average ratepayer, you and I, understand this totally. If it's going to mean lower rates for us, the ratepayer, which is basically going to finance this thing, then yes, I would support it. But that hasn't been proven yet, and until that does, I'm not interested in bankrolling anybody's pockets or giving anybody golden parachutes at the expense of working families and working people in Montana, and specifically in Missoula.
John?
Well, here you go. Here's the best opportunity we got. This gas station down here is selling the hose to their pump. All right, so you go buy that hose. First of all, you can't give them cash. You got to go in debt. Oh, what are you going to borrow the money? Well, we don't know what the interest is yet. And then you're going to control what's going through that hose. You're going to control the pipe price of it. That's what they're trying to do. We're not going to get no savings out of this. We got Citicorp, a big corporation that wants to finance this deal. Won't even tell us how much interest they're going to charge us for it. He said, oh, I'm sorry, but that's not for public knowledge. That's what he said Monday night at the meetings. All right? So then we got a tied vote whether we're going to go for this or not. And who breaks the tie but our mayor? And who's the head of the outfit? The mayor is. So They're the problem here. You people need to get up and you need to go yell at this mayor because he's screwing us. All right?
Tim, do you have anything to add?
Well, yeah. No, actually, what I wanted to do was just point out a couple of things that have occurred recently in recent years. And you know, I've lived in Montana my whole life, and there was always Montana Power Company. You never thought it would go away, but it went away. It was a shocker. I couldn't believe it when Montana Power Company went away. So now we have Northwestern Energy, you know, taking over and doing the job that they've been doing, and they started working this angle and that angle, and pretty soon they're bankrupt. Well, that's not much of a confidence builder. I don't have much confidence in these people. I think we need a little more security. Whether this is the plan, the one that's been presented, or whether it's another, I think that the citizens of Montana and all of you in this room would be well served to own these transmission facilities because they're critical to our state's economy.
Okay, now we're going to start with Mark on this question, and we did talk about this earlier in another question, but maybe you could just enhance your answer. What will you do to improve the South Hills Trail system?
I think the proposal that Jeff Stevens brought forward to the Moose Can Gully Council last week about the, hopefully the conservation easement we're trying to get across Hillview over to, I believe it's Garland, connect with Garland Park would be a great improvement, a great addition to the trail system. And again, the rebuilding of Hillview, even though, you know, it's a main thoroughfare, you know, having sidewalks on it, having bike paths on it, that would in turn connect to that trail system. Hopefully we can get that conservation easement from that landowner. Definitely would be a huge improvement to the South Hills neighborhood and the people that live there. So I would hope that happens. I would support it wholeheartedly because I think it would again improve all of our quality of life as we live there.
John?
Well, I'm all for trails, but I'll tell you, I don't walk trails too great. So if I can get my three-wheeler, little electric scooter on it, I'm very happy. The biggest thing is make sure all the players are in place. Because my understanding, not quite all the players are in place on this trail. So make sure you have the right-of-ways before you say you do. And be upfront with people on these trails. I think trails are a very important thing in Missoula. They connect a lot of areas all over town, and I'm in great support of trails. But just make sure everything's there before you say they're there. Thank you.
Tim?
Well, I can't say that I'm familiar with the South Hills Trail system. I know there's no trail going through my neighborhood, so maybe the one thing that I would do would be to establish a trail in my neighborhood. I think I'm aware of some pocket parks and open spaces that aren't connected, and I think, hey, that would be a good thing. Connect some of these open spaces so folks can use them. There's some isolation. Oh, let's work on that. Beyond that, I don't know. I don't have any other suggestions.
Dick?
I would support the strong, heavy maintenance of the trail system, and certainly the addition of this new section that's been proposed that Mark mentioned. I would ask you, how would it be if we had $300,000 to put into the trail system rather than into a new Recreation and Parks office on the swimming pool construction that was not authorized in the bond or authorized in the ballot? How about the $3.5 million over the bond that we're spending on the swimming pools? Now, I'm not against the pools, we need the pools, but how about that $3.5 million? That would buy a lot of other recreation things that we're not getting because of that.
Okay, this is the last question from the audience, and perhaps we could allow 2 minutes per person for this. And we'll start with John Wilkins. And I'm combining two questions because one of them is more or less a statement and kind of a rhetorical question. So here's the statement. PNCs under 5 acres are on hold, density bonuses are gone, and boundary relocations may very well be illegal. What is the community trying to tell you? And the question, for you to respond to is, let us know your specific views on infill development in Missoula.
Well, let's see, if you were reading the paper about a year ago, you saw a picket on Higgins, or by Hoagieville. I organized that one. That was 119 Dearborn, okay? I've been fighting these PNCs. I'm probably the lead person in the city that's been fighting these PNCs, planned neighborhood clusters, pre-court type things. They're wrong for Missoula. Now, here's the thing about infill type development. You look at other large cities that are doing infill type development, there's a reason they're doing them. They're doing them to reduce traffic, to reduce congestion. So when you see an infill type development in these large cities, there's a little bit of commercial in there with them. There's a coffee shop, there's a store. They are encouraging people not to get in their cars, but to go right there, right beside them and get their quart of milk so they don't have to jump in their cars and go. They encourage people not to drive. And we in Missoula, we're doing just the opposite. We put them out by the airport. There's not a store within sight. They got to get in their car to go get something. Or we put alley houses in. You heard Mr. Ingen, who, by the way, never saw an infill thing he did like, because he voted for every doggone one all the way down through. I was there every time. I watched it. My voice was the opinion that said, no, don't do this. I helped get the moratoriums in. And I know nobody else that's done the work and the legwork that I have done and will keep doing to stop this in Missoula. Thank you.
Tim.
I'm not sure I remember the question now,
It's about-
but I know the issue. Yeah, that's fine.
You know the issue.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, yeah, planned neighborhood clusters and density bonuses were tools that were developed to assist developers and planners in developing projects that were acceptable to neighborhoods. Did it work or not? Sometimes. So the notion there was you bring people to the table and you talk about what will work, hopefully coming up with a solution. I think there's hope that we can still do that. So I'm not ready to say that we're done with those tools. They're on hold right now. The problems that have been caused mostly are the boundary relocations. Now that activity was one that was governed by state law. Here we are with a conflict about what is a buildable lot. Clearly, Missoulians have rejected the notion that small lots are buildable. We need to get together and decide what we're going to do with these smaller lots. I think if we bring the various interests to the table and talk about what the options are, and believe me, we're not going to stop growth. We're not going to stop the increase in density by disallowing the use of the tools that we've developed. You will see increased density. So we need to manage it. We need to talk about what we're going to accept and come up with something that's acceptable to those folks who want to develop their property. Those folks who have an asset that is useful to the community. Let's find some solutions.
Guess I have to ask, why bother with infill? You've got several thousand houses now that are going to come out of the Nolny Ranch area. There's several thousands of houses that are going to come out of Ravalli County. They're going to produce people coming here. You got the same in East Missoula. You got the same thing coming out of Frenchtown. The same thing coming up on US 93 North as that highway improves. And I have to ask, what are we gaining percentage-wise by clogging up a neighborhood or ruining the neighborhood atmosphere or spoiling the people who have built their homes or bought their homes and lived there for many years? What are we gaining by infill? It isn't going to change anything. We've got massive problems, transportation and water and sewer to deal with, and here we're arguing about infill, and we're going to try and stop the tsunami of people that are coming in from every direction to Missoula. No, infill is not a tool to be used, I don't think. Thank you.
And Mark?
Infill is kind of a new term for me. Again, haven't really experienced it until I moved here. At least the emotions surrounded around it. I think, it's been used in wrong ways, and it's been used in right ways so far, from what I can see. Wrong ways, definitely, where they've adjusted lot lines, turned boundary lines to build houses in backyards, build houses in alleys. That is the wrong way to go about it. PNCs, density bonuses, things like that, I think work in some instances. They don't work everywhere, though. I think they've been tried. Sometimes they work, sometimes they haven't. But I've always said that if you're not making mistakes, you're probably not doing very much. Mistakes have been made, but there's been a learning process involved with those. I think where infill works now, what I can see in the city, is developments much like Champion Lumber Mill, the old Interwest Lumber Mill on Russell, where you've got tracts of land that have been abandoned that need to be cleaned up, and you put something there that is mixed use, that's residential, that's commercial, that's cultural, so that, again, you reduce the amount of people needing to get in their cars to go do something. At least you give them an option, that they don't have to get in their car to do something, either whether it's to feed themselves or to go out and enjoy an evening or something. I would support that kind of development and infill within the city to make it a better place to live for everybody and make it more affordable for people to live here too. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you all for coming. Thank you to the candidates. I think that I've tonight learned what the word candidate comes from. It comes from candid, because they've all been very candid and given you straightforward answers. I do have to compliment them, each and every one of you, on that. And also, I want to thank all of you, 4 gentlemen and the mayoral candidates. I didn't say this, but it does take a lot to get out and campaign. It takes a lot of shoe leather, a lot of hard work and time and energy. And I think we all appreciate the time that all of you have been putting into this to be more aware of the issues, to be more aware of what the residents want in your neighborhoods. And so I do applaud each of you for you're welcome to stay and have some cookies and